Blessings, everyone. Welcome to the new Just Us Speaks podcast from Just Leadership. I'm your co-host, Lester Young.
And I'm your co-host, Hakeem Crampton. Just Us Speaks is being produced to amplify the voices of directly impacted people, particularly the voices of formerly incarcerated people.
Just Leadership was founded on the principle that those who are closest to the problem are also closer to solutions, but too often further from the resources and the power to affect positive change.
So on this first season of Just Us Speaks podcast, we're interviewing leaders from the most recent 2022 cohort of Just Leadership USA's Leading with Conviction leadership training program.
Today, we're talking with Andrew Winn. Andrew is a husband of Kimberly, a dog dad of Chico and Pepper, an executive director of the Insight Garden program. The Insight Garden program offers in-prison horticulture programs in 10 California prisons and reentry service for those involved in the prison program. Insight Garden program site at the intersection of environmental, social, and racial justice, providing access to the natural world for those involved in the criminal legal system. Additionally, Andrew is a graduate of UCLA and holds an alumni board position. He is an avid trail runner, backpacker, hiker, and a natural enthusiast. He co-founded the Underground Scholar Initiative at UCLA and helped expand Projects Rebound statewide. Andrew, welcome to the Just Us Speaks podcast.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Before we just dive into this, my thing is that I'm always intrigued by like gardening, horticulture, and how that actually brings about some form of rehabilitation. Is that therapeutic for the men and women incarcerated? Like, and not only that, but where did you get this idea of the Insight Garden program from?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the first part, which is, access to nature in a prison is huge, right? Like when I was inside, like getting my hands in the soil and like getting dirty, right? Like, and just being a part of something, the growth of something was really just like powerful, right? And so my job inside prison last time I was there was carpentry, and right next door was the landscaping. And I would see the bonsai tree right there, and I would see all these folks getting dirty, and I'm like, and people really enjoyed it. And I'm like, I like getting dirty, right? And I think a part of that is like, what does 8-year-old Andrew like? What does the 6-year-old Andrew like to do? And I remember my feet were dirty, my hands were dirty. That's because I was in the mud outside playing all day and just enjoying life. And I think just kind of in the same essence is like, how do we get like that child back into the person? How do we reestablish who we are, when our humanity has been removed through a criminal legal system that's not always out to support us, right? And so I think that's where I get like a lot of excitement from, offering horticultural therapy and programming inside prisons.
Yeah.
And then the other part is we have a curriculum that goes along with it. So we don't just show up and garden, right?
Yeah.
You could. But we have a curriculum that goes along with it. And in Arc 3 of our curriculum, we talk about inner gardening. So in the first 2 arcs, we really, establish like the environmental parts of it, build up the skill sets, the vocabularies, the things folks would need to really understand the gardening components.
Yeah.
And then we transfer it into an inner gardening, right? And so it's being able, like, if you were to tend to yourself in the same way that you are tending to that plant.
Oh, wow.
Like, how are you taking care of it, right? Yeah. How are you creating an ecosystem that provides care for that plant? And then what is the ecosystem that you're providing care for yourself? And then to add, like, there's things that we will have in our curriculum. And I think one of the things that I gravitate towards is composting, right? Like we talk about compost. And for some of us, we're really into it. And some of us, we're not really into it. But regardless, it's like we understand what it is taking organic materials and then reshaping them to do something else to provide more life, right? And so, like, if you, Lester, were to compost parts of your life, what would that look like? What parts of your life would that be?
Wow.
And that's what we bring within our curriculum.
Hey, man, I like how you make those connections, because it brings me back to this book I remember reading many years ago while I was incarcerated called As a Man Thinketh, So Is He. And in this book, it was saying that your mind is like a garden and your thoughts are the seeds. and your action cultivate the seeds, right? So it's very similar to what you're saying, is like you look at it from that perspective when you see a garden. And I remember also it says that the weeds are your negative thoughts. And you have to remember, if you have a positive seed or idea, be just like a gardener, make sure you pull the negative weeds up. You see that connection right there and how it ties in. So I love what you're talking about when it's going into Insight Garden. It's like, let's look at this not only from the physical perspective, but how do we tie that into our internal being and changing our mindsets, which changes behavior and produce better people. Because if the garden's right, if the soil is right, then guess what? You got good product. Good plants. You got all of these great things in there. So I love that, man. I love the way that you and your team is approaching that. Like, so my thing is, obviously I can tell that that's something that gives you a lot of satisfaction, right? You really are fulfilled in that role right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being able to provide this, but also in many ways, I'm sitting at the table now, right? Like before, I was just subject to people sitting at the table. And so now I have direct conversations with wardens. I'm like, hey, how can we do this? And before, that was never about it, right? And so now, like, being able to, in many ways, like, represent the community, people that I work with, people who've been incarcerated just as I have, other folks who are stakeholders within all this, right? Like, they empower me, they entrust me to be able to have these conversations with the warden, with our headquarters for Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And so there's a lot of reward in that. So while I garden, and I'm growing broccoli and cauliflower right now because it's wintertime gardening, right? Like, yeah, I garden, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm an expert gardener, because I have expert gardeners on staff, right? Like these gardeners that we have on staff, they shoot it all day long. They shoot it, right? And they know this is in their blood, and they do this. Me, I get the opportunity to sit at the negotiation table. I have an opportunity to be able to be like, hey, we need this because of X, Y, and Z. And so I get fulfilled knowing that is my community who raised me. They're the ones who set me up for success. They're the ones who support me. They're the ones who take me places and really shape my mind. And so when I'm sitting at these negotiation tables, I am able to like bring that together. And there's a lot of fulfillment for me in that, being able to represent folks who entrust me. That's powerful.
That's powerful, man. Before I go, as you was talking about gardening, and you mentioned about being 6 or 8 year old, what would the 6 or 8 year old Andrew be doing? I remember moving from Boston, Massachusetts to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and my grandmother, every summer, she had a garden in a backyard, like a big garden, growing like okra, all of the necessary things in her garden. And I remember she taught me that, right? And I remember when I got older, man, I started doing that same thing. Like when we moved from where my grandma was staying, and we moved to another area in Hilton Head, I started my own little garden. But, the sad thing is I disconnected from that. I disconnected from it. But even at this age where I'm at now, I still repine to get back into gardening, because it was therapeutic for me, but it also just bring me back to those memories of spending time with my grandma. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad you lift that up. That's something I'm going to definitely look at going into this coming year, God willing. When we're talking about having a seat at the table, that brings me to this next question, is like, what has been your favorite part of Leading with Conviction? You're a recent graduate of Leading Conviction, and we really speak about the importance of amplifying the voices of those who are directly impacted and being at the table. If you're not at the table, create your own table. So what has been your favorite part of Leading with Conviction?
I touched on it just a little bit ago, but community, being able to be with folks who have shared experiences and understanding what they're like, right? Yes, I'm a straight white man, and I understand all the immense privileges that come with that. And we also know that what's represented within our prison systems in California and beyond is not necessarily representative of those who are there. And so I think just being able to have a community, understand the racial backgrounds to the problems that we have within our criminal legal system, and then being able to amplify that, I feel like there's a responsibility for me that I need to be able to say, hey, liberation work is not just for me, for all our people.
Mm.
And we know that there's racial implications. We know that there is implications around socioeconomic statuses. We know that there's all kinds of different intersections that cause people to get locked up.
Mm.
And so for me, being part of Just Leadership allowed me to be in community, immersed into that community of people who are not afraid to speak their mind, people who are not afraid to just step up and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing.
Mm.
And, much of my community was already influenced by Just Leadership before I became a fellow, right?
Wow.
I have tons of friends who were fellows prior to me becoming one. And so being able to sit at these tables, learn from my folks, the people I love, the people I care for, and then being able to also carry their stories with me when I'm at the negotiation table, when I'm setting up programs, when I'm, doing the things I do with the Insight Garden program, they stick with me. And that's one of the most powerful things I feel that Just Leadership really provides the community, which is the connections with each other. We know that this is not strictly a California thing. I'm in Sacramento. It's not strictly a Sacramento thing, right? This is something we see nationally, but even globally, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to just be a part of something much bigger than my little world right here, and be able to say, hey, no, my friends are experiencing this. What can we do to address it?
Man,
And that's the power of Just Leadership.
Oh man, thank you for that. I mean, I fully agree with you on that. That's just the beauty of the alumni of this organization, and being a part of this beautiful organization. When it comes down to, when we say we're really nationally, we have that national reach. You definitely saying, I'm here in South Carolina, Hakeem is in Detroit, Deanna's in Ohio, Ronald. It's like, it's the beauty, but all of that, man, we have fellows in all of these various states representing not only Just Leadership, but the causes that they're very passionate about.
Just Leadership USA amplifies the power of directly impacted people by investing, educating, empowering, and elevating their voices so they have the tools and resources to self-organize and advocate for themselves, their families, and their communities. Together, we build an equitable, fair, and just U.S. To date, over 1,400 leaders in 45 states and in Washington, D.C. are hard at work transforming people and communities who are harmed by mass incarceration. Please partner with us to bend the arc of criminal legal reform by donating to our leadership programs today. Our network of leaders is strong and growing. Together, we're building local power for national impact. Every donation supporting JLUSA and our leaders has a ripple effect across families, communities, and generations. With your support, we can continue working together towards our singular vision of a just, equitable future for all. To learn more, go to jlusa.org/give2023. That's jlusa.org/GIVE2023.
What's up, Hakeem? What you got on your mind, brother?
Yeah. I was just curious, Andrew, with the leadership vision that you have and you lead and you drive with out in the community, and the work you're doing is really inside, but it's outside. It's like, juxtaposition, right? But what's your vision of what, leaders like us that have returned home and got these powerful leadership skills, and what can we do inside the prison system with these skills that we have? How can we engage them to bring them on board with where we're at?
Yeah, I think, big part of it is modeling, right?
Modeling the way.
Modeling the way, right. It really is. I just think about when I was younger, I had some models, I had some role models and people I looked to, and I started mirroring their behaviors, right? And some of them weren't healthy behaviors. Some of them were healthy behaviors. And so in the same sense as I have a responsibility as somebody who goes inside as a leader in this work to model behaviors that we would want to see in our communities, like I said, whether it's Sacramento, whether it's national, whether it's globally. And so being able to just say, hey, I respect your opinion and this is where I'm coming from, and be able to share that, express it in a kind and gentle way, showing folks a new way of kind of living, right? Understanding like we don't have to be in toxic masculinity. We don't have to perpetuate racial injustice. You know, we don't have to sit here and dwell. Like we can be what we want to be. And, you know, there are vehicles to get you to where you're at. And so being able to go inside and model what it can be like, what life can be like for folks. I can sit up there and I can talk to folks all day and like, you can do this, you can do that, X, Y, and Z, you know, kind of come in really strong. But, you know, like people inside prisons, they don't respond to that. They're their own people. They're doing their own time. I'm not doing their time for them. Yeah. And so for me to, you know, I can't go in there and be like, this is how you need to change. Like, this is how I'm living. If you want to live like similar, like how I'm living, here's what I've done. And so being able to share those experiences and to build people up. That's for me, that's what it's about. That's what I bring inside.
You know what I was thinking too? Like you think about, like you said, that hyper toxic masculinity thing that a lot of men in prison, you know, just like we got to, I gotta be tough. I gotta be tough in prison. They're showing to everybody that I'm the toughest guy on the block. But I always like how when transformation happens, right? When transformation happened, mind, going back again to the mind being the garden, and you change those, you stop pulling up those negative weeds and your mind start growing and blossoming. You'll find this person now humble, growing flowers and vegetables in the gardens in prison, right? You be like, and they be paying close attention to it, be showing that empathy. Like we talk about, you have to have a level of empathy. They showing that by how they care for the plants. That's a beautiful transformation, you know, when you see that. So I look and notice like you have like 10 of these programs now. What's the 5-year plan for the Insight Garden? What is that 5 to 10 year plan that you have with what you're doing right now, being that you already have 10? Like, what's the goal now? Take over the world,
the goal is, you know, the goal is to go deeper inside these institutions. So yeah, we're offering programming, but what if it means to grow healthy foods inside without exploiting labor, right? Like, what does it mean to get to increase access? We have waiting lists as long as like 200 plus people to get into our program. And my goal is to figure out a way to minimize that waiting list as much as possible. So it's being able to grow healthy foods. Right now, we have an initiative in California called the California Reform Model, where it's replicating some of the things that's being done in Norway. And I'm right there on the ground floor of trying to implement some of this. You know, I have wardens tell me, this is what I experienced inside Norway. Would you be able to replicate something like this? And I'm like, I'm your guy. How do we get there? Right? Like, and so being able to know that there are ways that we can do things that's more caring. So going deeper within where we're at, those 10 prisons, there's a lot more work to be done there. The other parts that we have is, you know, I'm looking at getting into reentry housing. You know, I want to give a shout out to the homegirl, Susan Burton of A New Way of Life. You know, really, you know, put me on game on understanding what it means to provide reentry housing for women. And that's where we see a huge need for it, particularly in California. You know, if you look at where women's reentry housing is at, it's in metropolitan areas, right? It's in the San Franciscos, the Oakland, the LA, the San Diego's, the Sacramento, right? But California is vastly huge. And so there's big gaps where people are not getting their needs met. And so we have identified Fresno as being one of those areas that could really use reentry housing for women. And so where are we going? We're looking at reentry housing for women as kind of our next step in building our reentry program. We're looking at providing mental health services for those who are part of our reentry program. So it's about creating the ecosystem of care where people are being fully taken care of. Now, they may not need the housing. They may not need the mental health services. They may not need the warm handoffs and the cell phones and the other things that we're doing for folks. And that's okay. But, you know, like being able to create access to those things. For a long time, we didn't have access to those. As people who've been incarcerated, you know, like going to the psychologist wasn't always cool because you knew that they were always going to try to put you on some bogus ass meds. Excuse my language. You know, like, be able to have real care for people and be able to create that ecosystem. That's what we're about. It's not about the surface level care. It's about going deeper to meet the needs of folks and really finding out who they are and allowing for like personal exploration in that. And so that's what we're trying to do. It's building out our reentry. It's doing more within our existing 10 prisons. And if we are able to get into more, we'll get into more. Of course, I have to pay a living wage to my folks because that's a part of our ethos is paying living wages to the folks who are going in providing programs, right? It's not simply just saying, hey, here's $15 an hour, go make it happen, Captain, right? It's going in there and saying, hey, here's a living wage. You have enough money to take care of yourself. Can you go ahead and take care of these folks too? So it's from inside, it's outside, it's all that, right? It's guided by an ethos that's deep inside, and not just me, but all of people of the Inside Garden program, where we truly care. And so that's, when you talk about where we're going with it, the program, it's how do we care more?
Nice.
You know what, Andrew, that's such a profound therapeutic approach. Because as we know, incarceration and post-incarceration is very traumatic, right? And so I can imagine those inside that are in your program, it must be therapeutic for them to be able to be involved in this process, to be involved in this program and make the connections to themselves, to their own personal growth and whatnot. But what does Andrew do for his own therapy? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, great question. So this job, this work ain't easy, right? Like there's a labor component to it, but there's an emotional labor component to it, right? Like these are people I really relate with. And so when they're telling me their stories, it's heavy, right? It literally hits right here. And so, on those days where the work is heavier than usual, I will figure out ways to get outside, right? That connection to nature is really, really healing for me. In my bio, I talk about backpacking, trail running, hiking. I do those things because how else am I going to get rid of some of the stress sometimes? Like I need to go to sleep at night. I can sit here thinking about what's happening to the homie inside. But at the end of the day, I need to be helpful within this. I need to take care of myself. And we'll take care of the homie too. And so like getting out there and just sweating it out on a trail, right? I have a dog. Her name's Pepper, and I mentioned it in the bio, right? She keeps me running. I outrun her, but she keeps me running because I know she needs exercise. I'm not fast or nothing, but she's just slow. But, like getting out there, exercising, get my mind right. It's almost like a form of meditation, being able to focus in, organize my thoughts, exert my body, right? Like so many times it's being able to find balance between the work of the mind and the work of the body. And there's healthiness between those, right? If they're balanced. And I try to figure out that balance. And that's how I take care of myself. It's just like being outside. Like before I got on this podcast and cleared my mind, I went outside and I checked on my broccoli. I checked on my cauliflower, right? It's getting that fresh air and just being with nature, actually touching the leaves and just, okay, I'm ready to do this, right? And so that's how I take care of myself. It's stepping outside, knowing I need a break. It's running. It's all those things. It's really just a lot of connection to nature and figuring out who I am as a person and honoring my inner child.
Man, I love that because, when I saw in your bio hiking and running and all that stuff, I'm like, that's me, like right now, the weather's not the best. It's constantly raining here in South Carolina, but I'm like, as soon as it clears up, I'm going hiking. Like I find myself care, like when we have calls, I just put my headphones on and go by a lake and just take my laptop and I just be right on a meeting or on my lunch break by water, in nature, where the trees are, all of that stuff, because it's very helpful for you. And I think that's something that we as leaders have to really begin to continue to demonstrate and model that way of what self-care looks like, man. So, my thing too is like all of that, like who was that person that inspired Andrew Winn to do what you're doing? Like, who's that leader, man, that before you may have gotten into this work that inspired you to open that window, which is the mind, and begin to dream and imagine creating this program, which is now 10 programs, but you want to do add more to it. Who was that leader that inspired you, man?
Lucky for me, like there was the former executive director of the Insight Garden program, Beth. She started this program. And so I will say this, like, let me go ahead and start with honoring her vision, her work, laying down the groundwork and allowing for somebody like myself who's been, directly impacted into this work and creating that space.
Yeah.
But like, who have I looked? I mean, there's so many influential folks that really put me into this work, that really put me on, and each step of the way, I mean, it happened, right? Like, I remember in community college, I was asked to write a paper about a news article, right? And they're like, now look for these things, code of ethics and all this stuff within that news article. I said, well, there's already a few news articles on me, right? Like, I've already been to prison. Let's just let me pull one of these ones out the hat and figure this out. And so I reviewed an article that was written on me. And the professor's feedback was, I'm sorry this happened to you. And there's more that you can be pulling out from your argument. And so in many ways, I didn't go deep on the stuff that was really on my mind on that article, because I was like, I wasn't sure how it was going to land.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then to just be recognized for that, I'm like, cool. That really like planted the seed for my academic inquiries, right? Like, okay, I can go deeper. I can have a stronger voice, a bigger opinion, and be able to just call things out for what they are. And so I think there's that. I think, watching somebody like Danny Murillo talk about like things that he was doing over at UC Berkeley, working with Romarilyn Ralston with Project Rebound, being able to understand her leadership and what she's doing and why she's doing it and like why it's so impactful. It's the Lily Gonzalez, right? It's being able to understand like your communities and honor them, and being able to like understand that to recognize that like our academic inquiries can intersect with our personal lives. And so I think all these people, and I just mentioned a few, but there's so many others. I can name them all day. I mean,
I get it.
W.E.B. Du Bois, reading The Souls of Black Folk is one of the things that really influenced me. And I would even add Frederick Douglass, how he was able to free the mind before his body became free. And so just being able to all those people, whether it's through books or through oral communication, like those were all who influenced me. I was brought up through on all those folks through this work. And that's what really, inspired me to kind of go deeper and work harder and find myself within this space.
Yeah, wow, bro. I feel you on that. I'm right along with you on that, man.
We are so excited to invite you to the Just Leadership USA 9th Annual Benefit Gala, Monday, June 5th, 2023, at PhD Rooftop Lounge at Dream Downtown in New York City. We're excited to bring JLUSA leaders, allies, and advocates together in person to unite around our shared values and propel our vision for the future. During the last year, we've made significant strides in building our capacity and infrastructure to become the only national systems change movement and policy table led by and for directly impacted people. This coming June, please join us for our first in-person celebration in over 2 years. Learn more at jlusa.org/gala. That's jlusa.org/GALA.
Yeah, Andrew, you got such a powerful, unique, perspective about, everything, really, and how you do your work, and that's crucial to furthering the goals that you seek out. So I was wondering, what model, of life or leadership, or inspiration do you follow, or what's your model of life?
I mean, like I said, there's lots of folks that that built me up and really gave me a lot of the knowledge that I'm utilizing today, and I'm really thankful for them. But I think one of the things I really came up on my own with, and maybe I didn't, maybe I heard it somewhere and I just can't place it.
Kicked in the mind.
Right, you know. But I've learned that it's never the big decisions in life, right? It's 1,000 small decisions. It's bending the arc, right? Like, how do we live? And when we make our decisions, like, where's it coming from? Right. And then for me, it's like knowing where it comes from and understanding that part allows me to build like my confidence in the decision-making process, knowing where it comes from. Right. We know that we see it every day where there are systems of oppressions, and sometimes there are decisions that people make unintentionally that come from those systems of oppression. So to be able to understand where I'm leading from, it's 1,000 small decisions. It's never the big decisions. You know, people respect me, at least and my loved ones respect me because of those 1,000 decisions, right? It's that integrity. It's being able to, you know, make a real intentional effort and to never speak ill about somebody. You know, it's those things. And so those are my models. My motto or my models that I come from is like really understanding where those are coming from, and then how can I go ahead and apply that into my decision-making ability. So 1,000 small decisions.
I love it, man. As we wrapping up, I just wanted to just maybe a couple more questions just to really just get a better understanding of Andrew, and so that we can get into the mind. We know that you love gardening. We know that you love leadership. You just graduated from the Just Leadership Leading with Conviction cohort. Just wanted to now, like, what does leadership mean to you going forward? Like, we talked about a seat at the table. We talked about you expanding the vision. But what does this leadership mean to you right now? Like, going into a new year and beginning this whole new transition in life. What does leadership mean to you now? After went through this program, planning for another year, what does this look like for you? Or what does it mean to you?
I mean, it means to me that I have responsibility on my shoulders. You know, I can't play like, oh, I didn't know this. And, you know, knowing that when I speak, when I do things, I am representing my loved ones. I'm representing the community who built me up. And so what does leadership mean to me? It means that there's an expectation on me to be the same person behind the scenes as I am on the front stage.
Don't be like a public success and a private failure.
Right.
That's a very powerful one, you know, and that's the balance. And that's why I think that self-care, that pause, don't be a public success, but you're a private failure in your marriage, your relationship with your children, your partners, you destroying that, but you're living up to this image of success, but you're really not. So I love what you said about that, man.
And let me add, I always go back to J. Cole's song, Love Yours. Right. And I think that's just that part of it. Like, you know, like, just love the stuff that's around me, right? Like, I have a great dog, I have a great wife, I have, you know, great people in my life, love mine. And so like that, I can put on a facade and I can have that public life, but deep down, my personal, behind the scenes, I got to love mine.
I like that. Love mine. Hakeem, what you got to say about love mine, brother?
I mean, that's you know, that's really what life is all about, love, you know. And, you know, one of the beautiful things about leadership is that, you know, we know leadership is about relationship. And, you know, forming a relationship requires love, you know. That's just a reality, you know. So, you know, you've been a phenomenal guest, Andrew. Really appreciate it. You know, we really want to give you an opportunity to, you know, conclude out some final thoughts to us all.
Final thoughts is, at the end of the day, I encourage everybody to figure out ways to be kinder and gentler with each other and really center our humanity, because we're tied to each other, whether we want to or not. The decisions we make today not only will impact other people, but will impact ourselves later on. And so how do we go ahead and find kindness, love, and just friendship and camaraderie and just solidarity amongst all of us, right? And, you know, I really want people to, you know, at the end of the day, have real intentionality about being kind with each other, because that will get you so much further in life. And so I want to leave the podcast knowing that we can plant this seed. You know, listening to this on the other side, that speaker, you know, I want you to figure out more ways to be kind. When somebody makes you upset, step back and say, how can I be kind in this situation? How can I, you know, hold back these words that I really want to say and create new words that will go ahead and be representative of me, not only today, but 20 years from now.
Nice.
You know, you can find Insight Garden at our web address at insightgardenprogram.org. And there are ways to get involved. There is a volunteer form on there. There's ways to make gifts. There's swag that you can buy. Let me just say this, it's shameless, but we have incarcerated artists who love Insight Garden so much that they donated their art to Insight Garden. And now we have it on auction, and folks are able to buy art that was crafted inside. So there are ways that you can get involved from following us on social media. You know, we're on all the major platforms, Insight Garden Program or Insight Garden. You can look us up, but there are ways to get involved. But even just like locally for other folks, just know that like there's an inner and outer garden, right? And what are the ecosystems people are doing to take care of themselves? And I think care really starts with kindness. And I would just want to leave kindness with you all.
We're going to send kindness back to you, my brother. Much kindness to you, to your wife, to your dogs, and to your network. Much kindness, man. It's been a phenomenal time spending with you today, just talking to you about everything that you're passionate about. That's leadership, insight gardening, and just being kind to people. Thank you, my brother, and you have a fantastic day. Continue to do things that continue to make you a better leader. Be blessed. Peace.